They can hover in conditions that would ground civilian helicopters. Strong winds, poor visibility, rough seas. They can spot a person from miles away using infrared sensors that detect body heat. Before we continue, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It costs you nothing but makes a huge difference to us. The pilot in the water has several ways to signal his position. First, the emergency locator beacon continuously transmits his exact GPS coordinates. Rescue helicopters receive this in real time. Second, the sea dye marker. This chemical creates a massive, bright green patch that spreads across the surface. From the air, it's visible for miles. Third, signal flares that shoot up trailing bright smoke. Fourth, a survival radio to communicate directly with rescue aircraft. In the 2025 Virginia rescue, they located and recovered the pilot in 88 minutes. That's incredibly fast. For comparison, when a Boeing 737 ditched off Hawaii in 2021, rescue took about 2.5 hours. But not every rescue goes smoothly. When things go wrong. April 2019, a Japanese F-35A crashed into the Pacific during a training mission. Radio contact was lost. No mayday, no emergency call. The aircraft simply disappeared from radar. Search operations launched immediately. Japanese and U.S. Navy forces deployed. They found debris quickly. The emergency beacon was detected, but the pilot wasn't located for weeks. When they finally recovered his remains in June, investigators learned what happened. The pilot had experienced spatial disorientation. This happens when your inner ear gives false information about your aircraft's position. You think you're level, but you're diving. The investigation found he never sent a distress signal, never attempted recovery. By the time the aircraft hit the Pacific at high speed, survival was impossible. This tragedy shows why altitude matters so much. The higher you are when the engine fails, the more time you have to diagnose problems, the more time to make decisions, the more likely you survive if you eject. Modern ejection seats can function at speeds from 0 to 760 miles per hour. They work from sea level to 82,000 feet, but there's still a minimum safe altitude for ocean ejection, about 100 to 140 feet. Below that, the parachute can't fully deploy before you hit water. That's why the F-16 pilot ejected at 1,460 feet. He knew he was cutting it close. Any lower might not save him, but he made the right call. The ejection worked. The parachute deployed. He landed safely. Coast Guard rescue swimmers pulled him from the Atlantic with only minor injuries. That's the system working exactly as designed, but it doesn't always work that way. The Transair 810 lesson, July 2021. A Boeing 737 cargo plane takes off from Honolulu, heading to another Hawaiian island. Just 2 pilots on board, no passengers. Minutes after takeoff, they lose an engine. But they had 2 engines. One failed, the other worked fine. The 737 can fly perfectly on one engine. Should have been a simple emergency. But the pilots misidentified which engine failed. They reduced power to the wrong engine. The working engine went idle. The failed engine got full power. Suddenly, they couldn't maintain altitude, and they were over the ocean. The captain radioed air traffic control. "We've lost number 1 engine. There's a chance we're going to lose the other engine, too. You might want to let the Coast Guard know." That was the best decision they made. 14 minutes after takeoff, both engines were producing almost no thrust. The aircraft descended toward the ocean. Alarms blared. They ditched into Mamala Bay at 2 a.m. The plane broke apart on impact. Both pilots escaped through cockpit windows. The captain clung to the vertical tail. The first officer floated on cargo soaked in jet fuel. Coast Guard helicopters found them. Both survived, but the aircraft was destroyed, and it didn't have to happen. This teaches a crucial lesson. Even with two engines, ocean emergencies are incredibly dangerous. In a single-engine fighter jet, you get one chance, one engine, one decision, and the ocean doesn't care how skilled you are. The technology keeping pilots alive. Modern ejection seats are engineering marvels. The U.S. military uses systems like the ACES-2. These seats have sensors that detect altitude, airspeed, and aircraft attitude. They automatically adjust the ejection sequence based on conditions. Some advanced seats can even compensate for inverted flight. If the aircraft is upside down and low to the ground, the seat calculates the trajectory needed to clear terrain. The survival equipment has evolved too. The seat pan contains gear designed by people who studied every ocean survival scenario imaginable. Life rafts inflate automatically. Emergency radios operate on multiple frequencies. Sea dive markers are visible from aircraft at 10,000 feet. Coast Guard helicopters can operate in weather that grounds most aircraft. Night vision systems, infrared cameras, GPS tracking accurate to within meters. They can hover over rough seas while rescue swimmers drop into the water. This technology has pushed the survival rate for ejections to about 92% worldwide. 30 years ago, it was much lower. Every advancement in seat design, survival equipment, and rescue capability saves lives. Training for the unthinkable. But technology is only half the equation. Training is the other half. U.S. military pilots train constantly for engine failures. In simulators, instructors can program any emergency scenario imaginable. Engine fire at takeoff, dual engine failure at cruise, electrical system failure over water. Pilots practice these scenarios until responses become automatic. Because in a real emergency, you don't have time to think. You have time to react. Without training into muscle memory, you hesitate. And hesitation over the ocean can be fatal. Navy pilots have additional challenges. They operate from aircraft carriers, often hundreds of miles from the nearest land. If an engine fails during carrier landing, they have to eject immediately. No time to troubleshoot. May 2025. An FA-18F Super Hornet approached the USS Harry S. Truman for landing. The arresting wire failed. The jet careened off the deck at over 100 miles per hour. Both the pilot and weapons systems officer had less than a second to decide. Both ejected. Both were recovered with only minor injuries. That's the level of training we're talking about. Split-second decisions in life or death situations. And these men and women make the right call, time after time. Why not two engines? People often ask, why not give all fighter jets two engines? The FA-18 Super Hornet has two. If one fails, the other keeps running. Seems obvious, right? But aircraft design is all about trade-offs. Two engines mean more weight, more complexity, more maintenance, higher fuel consumption, reduced stealth characteristics. For some missions, single-engine designs make more sense. The F-16 is single-engine because it prioritizes agility and cost-effectiveness. The F-35 is single-engine because adding a second engine would compromise its stealth profile and increase weight beyond acceptable limits. So instead of adding a second engine, engineers focus on making that one engine as reliable as possible. Modern fighter engines can run for thousands of hours between failures. They have redundant systems. They can operate in extreme conditions. But nothing is perfect. And when that rare failure happens over water, we rely on every other system to work flawlessly. The ejection seat, the survival gear, the emergency beacons, the rescue teams. It's a chain of safety measures, and each link has to hold. Respect for those who serve. Let me be clear about something. Every time a U.S. military pilot straps into a fighter jet, they're accepting risk. They know that engine failures can happen. They know that ocean ejections are dangerous. They know that despite all the training and technology, sometimes luck plays a role too. And they do it anyway, because someone has to defend our nation. Someone has to maintain readiness. Someone has to train the next generation of aviators. These men and women volunteer for this responsibility. They spend years mastering skills most people will never understand. They put their lives on the line every single day. When an engine fails over the ocean, we see the culmination of that dedication. We see a pilot staying calm under pressure, making the right decisions, following procedures, trusting their equipment, and we see rescue teams launching into dangerous conditions to bring their fellow service members home. That's worth recognizing. That's worth respecting. That's worth supporting. Conclusion: the next time you see a fighter jet flying overhead, remember what we talked about today. Remember that the pilot up there is trained for scenarios most of us can't imagine. Remember that if their engine fails over water, they have less than 2 minutes to decide whether to eject or try to save the aircraft. And remember that the 92% survival rate exists because of decades of engineering, training, and dedication by thousands of people working behind the scenes to bring pilots home safely. If this video gave you a new appreciation for what our military pilots face, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below.